Today, I'm delighted to speak with Liz King Caruso. She is an entrepreneur. She's an innovator in our industry. She had her own company for the last 10 years. Most successful person recognized by many different magazine and organization. She will share with us what is the difference between virtual event and face-to-face event and how to design them, what to learn right now to be ready for afterwards. And also, very interestingly, what we should be learning, not necessarily to deliver ourselves the virtual experience, but to be able to plan that virtual experience and partner with the people that are helping us to deliver it to our customer. Enjoy listening. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business of Meetings podcast. I'm Eric Rosenberg, and today I have the great honor of speaking with Liz King Caruso. She is an icon in our industry. She's a thought leader. She's doing a lot of conference, virtual, that she's going to be talking about. I've been willing to talk to her for a long time, and I'm delighted that today is the day. Liz, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for taking the time. Before we start talking about the events you put together and all the recognition you've had for the most influential person in the industry, and I think that when people, if they don't know about you, what they know what you do, they will understand why. How did you get into the industry?
Well, I think like a lot of people, I fell into the industry. I wanted to be a family psychologist. I worked at a counseling center and decided I didn't want to do that anymore. So I went to work just in an administrative position at Columbia University in New York City. And I just started looking around and looking at all my colleagues. And I realized that I was the administrator on the event team. And I didn't even realize that that's what I would be doing. And that was the first moment it ever occurred to me that event planning could be a career. I had no idea. I'm one of those people. I've always planned events, all through grade school and high school, college. I was always the crazy one putting some weird event together. And so I started to pursue it. And I ended up getting promoted a bunch of times at Columbia into a role that just did the events, which was great, and got a lot of experience there. And then eventually broke out on my own and been running Liz King events for 10 years now.
That's fabulous. But I guess the psychology that you learn is helping you as well in your job, right?
Sure. I mean, psychology, if you don't know what you want to do, that was kind of my thing. Was I wanted to graduate. I had already done voice performance, graphic design, computer science, and then I needed to graduate. So I just shoved it into, psychology's got all those electives that you can take.
Right.
It's really good for life. If you've got to just graduate, it's a great, great major.
And do you remember the moment when you thought for yourself, you know what, I'm going now to start my own company?
Well, I remember thinking that I wanted to do it and hoping that I could do it and thinking, maybe in 10 years, I will get enough experience and I'll really, understand what it takes and I'll have all this money in savings and all of that. And then that was contrasted with just inquiries coming in. I had a Twitter account and a blog. Liz King Events was just my Twitter handle and my blog address. It didn't have a company attached to it at all. And then there was just one client who came in that I thought, this is so cool. I really want to work with them. I had started working with a mentor just to learn about the industry. So I ran to her and I said, you have to help me. I have to set up a business. And so it didn't happen at all on the timeline or the way that I thought it would happen. But I definitely knew, I'm a very independent worker. I'm very creative, very flexible. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to work inside a company for very long.
Right. And so the trigger was the first opportunity?
Yes.
And you're talking about your mentor. I don't know if you can mention that person.
Yes, her name is France Laflamme. She runs Laflamme Consulting Group in Connecticut. And we were connected through an organization called SCORE, which matches mentors. Really, really great program. And she has been instrumental. She helped me write my first proposal and first contract. She laughed at me the first time I wrote how much I was going to charge and really showed me the ropes of how much I was undercharging at the time. Yeah. And I owe a lot in my business to her.
So that's something that for anybody who's starting their business or for anybody that own their business, having a mentor is something extremely important, or coach, whatever you call it. People you can bounce ideas and get advice from, right?
Absolutely. People who know what you know. And it was great. It was a perfect relationship. And it is still, we still are in contact because it didn't have to be one directional either. In my case, I knew a lot about technology and there were all these apps coming out and
Right.
lots of stuff going on. And I was able to teach her about those things as much as she was able to teach me about kind of the ropes of running a business. And so because of that, to this day, we still rely on each other. And it's been a very great relationship on
That's
multiple
awesome.
levels.
Now, yeah, one of the key points that emerge when we speak with you is the you're a thought leader, and that's also, I know, something that you position yourself to, and rightly so. Now, everybody wants to be a thought leader. Not everybody can be it overnight. But what is your advice for people? Because in this world today, where obviously you need to cut into the clutter of so many different pieces of content being
Yeah.
broadcasted, how would you advise somebody to become a thought leader? What they should be thinking about, what they should be doing, and how frequently?
So, I think the first piece of advice is don't try to become a thought leader because I think when that's your mindset, it's all wrong. And a lot of the
Hmm.
stuff that you're doing is to play a certain game and it doesn't necessarily get you the output that you want. I think the only reason I'm still very uncomfortable using that word about myself, other people, you know, it's in my bio and stuff. I didn't write that bio. It's just one of those things that's still uncomfortable. And it's definitely not what I set out to do. I think what my advice for people is to do very similar to my path, which is be curious, be willing to collaborate, share your experiences. And that's what I've done my whole career. When I started with my blog and Twitter account long before I had a company, that's all it was. It was just like, here's 5 things that I've learned in the last few
Uh-huh.
weeks. And here are some things that I know you shouldn't do after this event that I just hosted. And these crazy people were doing these crazy things or
Hmm.
whatever it was. And always to this day about collaboration, never really worried about, how many listens do you have on your podcast? Because then I'll decide if it's worthy. No, if someone
Yeah.
wants to have a conversation, we have a conversation and let's see where it goes. And so I think that's part of it. The other piece, though, absolutely, that you should be paying attention to is really understanding your niche, what you're very good at, and
Hmm.
being as specific as possible. I think too many people in the events industry are all over the place. They do
Yeah.
all kinds of events. They'll take anything that comes their way. And
Hmm.
the thing is that people only see you in tiny snippets, a little on Facebook, a little on Twitter, a little here, a little there. And if the message is sometimes about fundraisers and sometimes about lighting, and they don't get it, they don't know how to pull it together. So you have to have a really specific niche. You have to be really passionate, truly and authentically about that thing. And then you have to just like keep talking about it all the time, maybe more than you want to. And I think that's a key towards developing thought leadership is that people have to know what your thoughts are. And
Right.
so it's not so much about the size of your audience or, how fancy you look. It's really just about, do you have some meaningful thoughts around a particular topic that people could identify? When I hear technology, I think Liz.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've always, I'm learning English every day. So when I hear the first time, the riches are in the niches. So what do they mean by that? And then, no, I get it. Yes, to your point, find
Yeah.
your niche and push on that. So you obviously are talking about technology
Yes.
a lot. You have Taxi Talk. You have Ignite Live. What are all those conference that you put together? If you can tell us a little bit, it's not a sales pitch, but just I think that by sharing what you've done, it's very inspiring and can also give ideas to other people. So, how did those
Sure.
different conferences come about in your journey?
So Texi Talk started because I wanted to know about all these cool platforms I was learning about. This was back in like 2010. I started, as you guys know, there were so many mobile app companies, so many
Yeah.
registration companies coming out. And so I was like, oh, it'd be cool if we could learn about all these companies. And it happened to be Internet Week in New York City. And it was just an open call for like anyone who wanted to do anything. So I partnered with a friend of mine in the industry and we said, hey, what if we did this like a showcase instead of doing a panel like everybody else or a discussion? We'll give 10 companies 4 minutes each. They get to just kind of share what they do, and then it's networking.
Mm.
And the goal was literally for me to learn. And I remember after that first event, and it was so successful, and everyone was like, when's the next one? I remember saying, Well, I don't know if there's going to be enough technology to do another one. We just
Wow.
featured 10 companies. I mean, that's how little I knew about it.
Yeah.
And so that conference evolved and evolved. And it was started just like a completely free for everyone to participate 2-hour event. It turned into a full day conference, $349 for people to attend. And we were bringing in, great sponsorships.
Mm-hmm.
We ran it for 10 events before we decided to just stop doing that conference in 2018. Which was really because at that point, everyone was talking about it. I couldn't go to an industry conference without somebody talking about the latest tech.
Mm-hmm.
And it got a little less fun. I like to talk about new and innovative. So we're actually bringing it back this year in November for the first time because it's all fun again. We're event professionals. We've been doing virtual and hybrid events for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
But a lot of people really didn't care about it. It was kind of like, oh, I guess if we have to. But now the whole industry doesn't really have a choice, and it's super exciting. It's a little frustrating, to be honest, when people are like, oh, this is all brand new. Come on.
Right.
Not quite new. But, it's fun that our industry is learning new things. And now we can really push the boundaries because the demand is a lot higher. And
you're forced to as well. I know some companies that had a policy of a certain number of days out of the office to work out of the office. The rest you have to be in the office. There's no policy with that right now. Totally changed.
Yeah.
So as you say, you've been doing this online meetings and a lot of people, like it was in the past, oh my God, TV is going to kill the football game. No, it increased the attendance. The same when we start streaming events. How do you see now post-crisis? Okay, obviously today is a different environment, but as we are reopening in the future, how do you see the future and the balance between hybrid and online events?
Well, I think what's great is, two things. One is that because people are doing so many virtual events right now in the crisis, we're seeing that there is a lot of opportunity. I have clients who have done 200-person in-person conferences for years. They moved it virtual and they had 3,000 people sign up. And they're like, whoa, I didn't realize that there was this many people interested. Or, we also are seeing that the technology is being pushed to its limits. I know Zoom was like down yesterday. There's just like so many people on it. And a lot of platforms, I think, have realized like, okay, what we had is totally, for example, from an engagement standpoint, I think we're really starting to say like, okay, well, this platform doesn't nearly have what it needs if we were to do it virtually. And so the technology is evolving very fast because these companies finally have enough clients to push it to where it needs to be. So I think that hybrid is not going to be just a transition. I think it will help us get to in-person events faster and more safely, but I don't think it's going anywhere. I think now people have realized what you can do with virtual, and it will stay as a long-term component of most large conferences and events. You also talk about really big conventions and citywide events. I think it's going to be quite a long time before we see those come back in person. And so for associations and organizations where that is the bread and butter of what they do, they're going to have to embrace virtual for a very long time, I think. And it's organizations like that are really going to push the boundaries of what we can do in a virtual environment. And therefore, I think make it valuable. It's not just a gap filler. It has lots of values that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get from an in-person event. And so if we can pair those things together, why would we not do that?
So do you see a mix, like for instance, instead of having one annual conference face-to-face, there will be one annual conference with face-to-face and live elements? And or do you see some virtual or online events in between and also face-to-face remaining?
I think both. I think the face-to-face, let's say the annual conferences, will embrace more of a virtual component. So maybe there is still the annual conference, but then you're going to have other experiences that you can participate in only virtually, and you have that hybrid experience. But I also think that for a lot of reasons, we're going to see that people are going to engage their audience on a much more regular basis. And so they may fit in more smaller in-person events throughout the year, as well as more virtual events throughout the year to keep their audience engaged. And again, just it's a numbers game, right? How many people can you have on site? So as we ramp that back up, I think people are, I definitely think the retreat business, for example, is going to be booming. The idea of small groups of people, high-end tickets,
Yeah.
really getting those meaningful experiences. I can see a lot more of that kind of stuff happening, as well as a lot of stuff on virtual.
What's the price point for you when you define a high price ticket?
It depends. I have one client we've worked with. They charge $30,000 for a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So, it depends. Some people, we have another client who charges $1,500 for a 2-day conference, and that's high ticket to some people. So I guess it depends what your budget
On the
is.
market, right?
Yeah.
And I must say, I can't wait to go back to conferences because there's an element that, and I've attended a lot of online events, obviously,
Sure.
the last 5 months, but there's this element of networking, of serendipity, of conversation, of motivation, of seeing friends and learning from colleagues that does not happen online. And I certainly see the value of online, but it's really, I'm missing dramatically being face to face. I can't wait to go back to conferences with people.
I think we all feel the same way, even if it's just for those hugs, it's nice to connect with people more than just Zoom or
absolutely
whatever platform.
And I'm sure the psychologist in you will explain to me the serotonin that has happening.
Sure, all that. That was years ago.
So I'm talking about the technology and everything you're seeing. What are some ideas, some new tools that you see in terms of engagement with people during your online event?
So I think it's multifaceted. There are platforms like Glisser who have existed long before we were doing these virtual events mandatory that have done some nice pivots and add kind of the second screen layer to your virtual experience. I also am just a big fan of mixing up your formats, really short sessions combined with longer sessions when necessary, but really rethinking what you might typically have done in an in-person environment. I think fun is something we always tried to integrate with our in-person, but I think it's even more important with virtual because it's just much harder to keep people engaged. We're also seeing much shorter days. One of the benefits of virtual is that you don't have to get everyone in a room at the same time for the same number of hours and jam pack everything that you want to do into, let's say, a day or 2 days or 5 days or whatever it might be. And so really just kind of thinking about what flexibility that gives us. We could have people do a yoga session at 8:00 in the morning and then release them to live their lives until a session at noon or until, a bulk of sessions. We did an event called the Pivot Virtual Summit in June. We did 10 days of content for 2.5 hours per day as compared to, we would never be able to do that in person. When am I going to get people to pay to stay in hotels for 10 days to be together and only give them 2 hours of content a day? It would never happen. But, I think things like that allow people to be more engaged and be focused and then be able to do all the other things. And it's a perk that we would not ever have in an in-person environment.
And when you design an online event, how different is it from designing the face-to-face event?
I would say it's the same skill set because I think that a lot of event planners are really overwhelmed by virtual, especially a few months ago, but even still right now are feeling like this is something they're completely, they cannot handle. But the truth is, I think the skill set of what we do for an in-person event is very similar. I think it's because the technology for some people is not understood, it suddenly seems very overwhelming. But the truth is, at the end of the day, a great event producer or planner will look at the goals and will design a program to fit those goals. And they look at the venue as, what does it allow us to do and what are the capacities? And then you're just doing the same with technology. You need to understand that the networking experience is not the same. You're not going to necessarily, in my opinion, duplicate a trade show booth experience, nor should you, because that's not what people want to do in a virtual environment. But it's not beyond a great event planner to think about what else you could do.
Like a breakout room with sponsor during lunch or something like that?
Or, like sponsors love VIP discussions. And so there's no reason they couldn't have a virtual happy hour where they send people cocktails at home and have a mixologist come and then they have a discussion. There's so many things that you can do that sometimes even merge the in-person and virtual experience. But even if it's completely virtual, that is just different than what we would do for an in-person event. And so I think it's just that they're not two different beasts, but they do have, different perks, and you have to pick from one and pick from the other and make them kind of marry together where it makes sense.
I totally agree. And that's something I keep repeating for years. Just focus first on the why, the goals
Absolutely
of the meeting, and then the rest will follow. But that's the most important thing, also to demonstrate the value that you're bringing.
Yeah. And if you have great tech partners, they'll help you figure out what's possible, but you have to be able to explain what you need, what the goals are, and what your requirements are. And a good tech partner will say, okay, our platform can do this, this, and this. It can't do that. And you do your evaluation just like you would look at a venue for a physical space.
And I'm fascinated by technology and what it allows us to do today.
Yeah.
And so, but there's virtual reality, holograms, artificial intelligence. What do you see coming in the future, and what are you maybe already integrating or thinking of integrating in your next event, whether it's online or face-to-face?
So I still think virtual reality is my conversation about it used to be, I think that people want that person-to-person experience. They don't want to be taken out of their physical space and brought somewhere else. They want to talk face-to-face. That's what we miss about in-person events.
Right.
And so I think that virtual reality and holograms and stuff, it's like a kitschy thing. It's cool. Sometimes it gets you lots of social amplification. Like there's reasons why you would do it, but I don't see it taking over in the events world. And suddenly we have that experience. Now with people being forced to be completely virtual, it's almost like you can use it the opposite way. Use virtual reality from your home to bring you in a room with lots of other people. And that I can actually see some power in. And I would love to see people doing something with that. Artificial intelligence, I think, we were already seeing very basic things like helping your attendees select sessions that would make sense for them and event chatbots. I think all of that applies just as well online as it did in person. I think it's always, again, there's that shiny thing that looks really cool, but figuring out what that can really do to achieve our event goals.
Exactly. Not technology for the sake of it, but technology to help you achieve your goals.
Yes, absolutely.
So now I would like to ask you to take your crystal ball and tell us about what do you see the future of our industry?
Yeah, so it's a hard question for people right now because, again, I think our industry has dramatically changed in the last few months. Yeah. I sit in a unique position, which I'm very grateful for, and certainly I wish I could say it was like some master plan on my side, but it's largely luck that I have a lot of experience with technology. So we've been busier than ever, which I understand is not the case for every event producer out there. But I also am an optimist. I also think very much about the resilience of our industry, the creativity that our industry brings. And I think it's a really rough time right now. But I see, as I mentioned before, technology, especially in the virtual space, is being pushed to new levels, which really gets companies to innovate. And I think that's been much needed, especially for hybrid and virtual. Right. I also think this has created a craving for those in-person experiences. And I think where we, at some point with some clients, had a hard time kind of like justifying the spend and getting them to think about more creative things, I think those battles will be a little bit easier. So I see very good things for our future as we emerge from this and we start to get to see each other in person again and hug and have these conversations. I think that the budgets are going to come back. The opportunities are going to be more than what we've had in the past. And the technology will be there to support us in doing more creative things, which I think allow us to reach bigger audiences. And, it's not just that people didn't want to add live streaming to their events, but there wasn't like a lot of strategic stuff you could do with it because it wasn't that engaging. And it was kind of like an afterthought. It's like, okay, here's the real event. And then you can just watch it from home if you're too lazy to come. That's, right. We're not there anymore. And we're rapidly getting farther and farther away from that point. So, I believe that all disruptions, are kind of needed in our industry. I think it was very much needed. We were, in many ways, I think, getting too stale. And so, I hate to see jobs go. I hate to see businesses change. But if you look back at this time 30 years from now, I think we're going to see how far we've really come because we had to go through this really difficult time.
I love that point of view. That helps a little bit to see this situation as a huge bump in the road, but not the end of the road.
Absolutely.
And as you say, it's easier to say when we're busy, when we have things to do, than when we're looking for a job. Now we're in this situation, and one thing I keep repeating is the Stockdale paradox, where James Stockdale was a prisoner of war, and he didn't give himself a deadline in his mind. He was just taking one day at a time, where other prisoner was saying, we're going to be free when Labor Day came. Labor Day came, that they were not free, and Thanksgiving, and they lost hope. So today, that's the challenge for all of us, is to keep going, or to keep searching for a new job, to keep learning new skills without having a clear deadline, but knowing that we're going to come back for sure. Now, having said that, what is your advice, or people in our industry, business owners in our industry, people in the industry, in terms of what they should be learning today to be ready for when it starts?
So I guess the obvious answer would be, to learn more about virtual, learn more about technology, get that experience. I do think that's going to carry you long in the future. I just got an email yesterday from someone who said they haven't been successful with job searching. Primarily, they keep getting shut down because they don't have the virtual experience. And so they everyone's looking for it, and they just need to get it somewhere. And so Go get it. There's a lot of opportunities right now to shadow and support and be hired as freelancers, just get that experience. The other thing though is, again, I do think in-person events are going to come back. And I do think in-person events are technically happening right now, obviously on a much smaller scale than they were. But I think it's an activity to think about. One of the things I've been preaching a lot lately is just think about the value that you actually bring to the table and what we do for our clients. It's not just an in-person event. You bring people together. It could be through virtual. I've seen a lot of people doing micro weddings. I've seen a lot of people doing physical gifting and using that in different ways to bring their audience together. So there may be services that you could offer your current clients and past clients that are just outside of the box, that are not a virtual event. Maybe you don't have to learn virtual events, but you want to think about, what were my clients trying to achieve before? And is there something new I can do that's not an event, but could use my coordination skills, use my planning, use those contacts with all these branding organizations. I mean, we have 1 billion contacts. I think sometimes we think of our value as just we plan physical events. But really, we're really good at convening people, at educating people, at all of these different things that, maybe it's just a tweak on the current experience that will allow us to service our clients now. And then when, in-person events come back, we get back to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think we all have to become virtual event producers.
Exactly. That's exactly the point I was going to make.
Okay.
When I had my corporate event agency back in Brussels, I will always work with the production company because of all the elements of the sales meeting that they were so important. But I was not the person operating. And the same thing here. I think we should know about how to use virtual events. That doesn't mean that we have to be the person who actually executing it.
Yes. It's all about collaboration. We have to... And we should already be doing this, like you said, we work with production companies. We work with all different kinds of companies that supplement what we need to do to execute a great event for our clients. We don't have to know the nitty gritty of all of it, but now's a really good time. I've been doing a lot of work actually with other independent event professionals who don't have the virtual experience, but their clients are coming to them. They want to do something virtual. They can still do all the speaker coordination, sponsor coordination. They just bring me in to choose the tech, set it all up, run the tech piece of it. And together we make money and they keep their clients. And, I just work as if I'm their company. I don't care either way, And so there are plenty of ways that collaboration and partnerships can kind of get you through without you having to go out and sit through 5 billion tech demos and try to figure it all out right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I still have 2 questions.
Sure.
The first one, how do people can get in touch with you?
So it's pretty easy. I'm Liz King Events on every social platform, Liz at lizkingevents.com, lizkingevents.com. So if you can remember Liz King Events, I'm sure you can find a way to connect.
Awesome. And my last question, when we meet face to face in 1 year, in less than 1 year.
Yes.
And I bring a bottle of champagne. What are we celebrating?
We are celebrating that we can be physically together again. We're hugging each other, and we are, back to a vibrant in-person event industry, but that we have learned so many things and kind of weathered through. I think this is maybe the worst, at least in my career, the worst thing our industry has been through.
Yes.
And so just the resilience that our industry will have shown, that we made it through. We use tons. I mean, I see creative, inspiring things every day that people in our industry are doing. So I think that's all of what we'll be celebrating when we see each other again.
And for someone who started her own business 10 years ago in the middle of another crisis, I definitely
I'm good
believe
at that.
you.
Yes, exactly right.
Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you. It was awesome talking to you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Liz, for spending time with me. It was very interesting to have your perspective on technology and see what you've been doing the last 10 years. As I said earlier on, for somebody who started their own business during the previous crisis, remaining so optimistic, that's very inspiring. Thanks again. And if you want to get in touch with me, www.eventbusinessformula.com/group. Where we share information in this Facebook group for people in our industry, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Thank you.